Excellent.
You sure on his mic? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Just as a reminder, I'm Ross Silvers. I'm the mobility manager here at PSTA, and as such, the manager over our DART service and our other paratransit services and our transportation disadvantage as well. Here to talk to you today about our paratransit services contract. The current contract we have is a 3-year contract with 2 1-year renewals, and that's ending September 30th of this year. So we have been out for procurement for new contractors to take over this service, and Debbie and James are going to fill in the details of that process. But to give you a little bit of background, this is PSTA's largest single contract, dollar-wise, that we have. It includes not only DART, but also a little bit of trips for transportation disadvantaged and East Lake Shuttle. So it's all the different door-to-door services that PSTA is offering. Of course, DART is the biggest one. DART is demand response transportation. And it is PSTA's means of complying with the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act requirement to offer what's called ADA paratransit. That means that you're providing door-to-door service for people with disabilities whose disability prevents them from using our regular accessible fixed route bus system. So every public transit agency in the country has to do that. And of course, they don't give you a pot of funds to do it with, so we have to use the variety of funds that we can find to make it happen. It is a vital service for people with disabilities, and it's people who, given you, obviously, the average age of the service is 77 for DART, so it's a lot of folks who are older, and it's our grandparents, and it's veterans and those who've given years of service, so we're focused on how can we provide this really critical service to them as a way of thanking them for their years of service to us in the community. So for history of DART, we've been a leader in contracting out the service for over 20 years. Back when we started, almost no one was contracting it out to private companies. They all did it in-house at a much higher cost, so we've been saving millions of dollars over the years by contracting it out. We left the choice model a number of years ago. We actually had to try to coordinate with 5 different contract companies, and it involved a lot of issues, both at a customer level as well as an operational and management and quality assurance level. So we left that model, and for the past 5 years we've been with Yellow Cab for our folks who are not in wheelchairs, and Care Ride for folks who need to travel in a wheelchair. So I think it's a little bit of an overview for you. Obviously, because Pinellas County has a large retirement population, we provide a lot of trips, more, for example, than Hillsborough, as you can see behind you. So it's a really critical service, and I appreciate your time and attention to make sure we make a great choice today. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. James Fred, Chief Operating Officer. So talk a little bit about our process going into this. So we knew we were going to increase the expectation of what we were looking for coming up. And the current contract is going to end this September 30th. And so the preparation has begun dating back over a year. And Ross Silvers, our mobility manager, has gotten together with our procurement team and Louis McCromedy, our director of procurement, and over the course of the year really look back at our current contract, what our needs are, what our challenges are, and a look at how we can kind of take the next step ahead. And really kind of put that work into the scope of work and the details to make sure we were really headed in the right direction so that when we say we're trying to improve the service, we do. So currently, as Ross mentioned, this is our largest contract here at PSTA. Over $6 million a year, we'll climb every year, over 300,000 rides a year, and with our 2-provider system right now, we have Care Ride doing the accessible and or the wheelchair service, which uses employees, and believe their model is one goal, one focus, one direction, and that's to perform the best and most excellent paratransit service they can under the DART program. And we've seen that, and it shows. And with our Yellow Cab system, they use independent contractors to pick up all the ambulatory or all the non-wheelchairs. And the ambulatories with the independent contractors, and for them, I get it, I want to make as much money as I can. And whether that's DART work or whether it's taking more attractive or lucrative work, about take the airport trip or the beach trip, The challenge with that side of the service was having enough bodies on the road to really make sure we were meeting our demands. And when we did see that, it came in the form of complaints. And this was one of our big tellers coming in. And obviously one complaint is too many. But if you look at the comparison on our wheelchair side, the bottom line is solid. I mean, pretty much looking back 12 months, pretty much zero complaints. And by comparison on our non-wheelchair side, as you can see, the line over the last 12 months, upwards of 30, upwards to 50 plus some months. And these weren't your type of complaints where, oh, you know, maybe the vehicle doesn't smell the best, or the car's going too fast, or the driver wasn't, you know, was rude possibly. These were the type of complaints where, hey, where's my ride? When's it coming? It's an hour, it's 2 hours. I'm still waiting here. I might have to reschedule my appointment. You know, this is really putting me out of my schedule. I'm going to be late for my job. Or if I'm going home, I'm stranded. I feel stranded now. It's been 2 hours. Those were the type of complaints we were seeing, very, very serious. And, you know, we were definitely alarmed by it. And so that really kind of shaped how we were going to go forward and how we were really going to, you know, really lift the level of expectation and actually come through. So we did our work. And again, Ross and the procurement team got together. And these were our performance standards going in. And we would make sure we put these in the RFP. We made sure that if you're a proposer out there for this service, you knew what we expected of you. But we also tried to be responsible. You get what you pay for. So we knew, listen, we want quality. We're going to have to pay for it. And we did try to increase our budget as such. I think we increased it maybe 10% over last year's budget, really just to be prepared to see what would come in. And I won't read all these to you, but you can certainly see where the emphasis is, where the measuring stick is for us in terms of what we look at in terms of excellent service. When we talk about that, the basic measures of transit service, safety, effectiveness, efficiency, reliability, all equal your quality of service. And of course, in this case, the big one, dependability. And on-time performance, you're going to see a reoccurring theme. The other thing we need to make sure that we did to not fall into the trap again of you know, apologizing to customers and complaint investigation, and then it keeps happening over and over again, is what recourses does PSTA have to ensure that we're performing at a high level quality of service and to make sure that we are holding our contractor responsible if, for whatever reason, they are not performing. So we expanded our carrot and stick system, so to speak. Our liquidated damages at least will give us the recourse to say, listen, you don't do what you're supposed to do, then unfortunately this is what it will look like. And I won't go through all these, but again, on-time performance, the standard would be 98% on time, meaning being inside that pickup window of 30 minutes. And if you don't, it could mean upwards of $50 to $200 a trip for pickups greater than 30 minutes. You know, for example, if you fall below 95% of your on-time performance, that might mean 1% of your invoice. If you fall below 90%, that can mean 2% of your total invoice. And this money adds up over time. Same thing, missed trips. What's the expectation? No missed trips at all. I mean, you can't explain that to someone who is looking to start their day off right and complete their schedule with a missed trip. So as you can see, $250 missed trip. Now, conversely, we wanted to also partner with whoever the provider was to be and offer incentives. So if you're performing and you exceed our expectations, we certainly said, hey, we would like to reward and recognize that good behavior so we keep it going. So, you know, for example, again, on-time performance, if you were achieving better than 98%, $1,000 if you keep that up. Or $500 for each time it's 0.5 incremental higher than that 98.5%. Now you might say, well, why do you have to incentivize your contractor? Why do you have to pay them more money to do what they said they were going to do in your contract? And the way we look at it is this. If they are performing at that high a level, and we certainly want to see that, we don't want to have to impose these liquidated damages. That means the service is running so efficiently, then that in of itself we'll see cost savings just through the efficiency of the service run, and also the reduction of staff time both on our side and the contractor side of chasing down complaints and investigating what went wrong here in this service, what went wrong there in that service. So we look at it as an investment as well into this service. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Debbie. We'll break down a little bit more about our about how we kind of graded the proposal rounds.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the procurement process. was a two-part process. We had put together over a number of months an RFP that went out. We had 4 proposals come back for the wheelchair or the accessible side, and we had 3 come back on the ambulatory or non-wheelchair side. The first part of it, where the team evaluated based on written proposals. And based on that, we shortlisted to come back for an in-person presentation to staff. Everyone but First Choice came back for presentations. And Luema, and I don't know if Jean Smith is here today, but she's our Procurement Agent 3, did a great job during this process. And what we came up with was a proposal from CareRide that came out to be about $35.1 million over the next 5 years. This is within our budget not only for next year, but over the 5-year period. And so from my standpoint, that's a wonderful thing. And they will be providing both the wheelchair and the non-wheelchair side. And what we are looking for is for the service to start October 1st. They have presented an excellent implementation plan to go from just handling today the wheelchair primarily. What you probably don't know is they also handle some of our ambulatory. And they do that because Yellow Cab cannot handle everything, so they move over into the other side. So we are looking at a not to exceed amount of $36 million, because I feel that we're going to be having a growing population in Pinellas County, which we've heard through a lot of different studies, even though they've provided for $35.1 million. So the action item today is to bring forth a contract with CareRide for the next maximum amount of 5 years, not to exceed $36 million for both types of services. I'd like to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Debbie, Ross, and James. Great presentation. So the current contract we have now is 3 years, and the one we're going to have now is going to be 5. Is that just a straight-up 5-year contract across the board, or is it 1 year with 4 one-year renewals, or how does that?
Right. The contract that's currently ending is a 5-year contract.
Oh, it's 5. Okay.
It is 5. And going forward, it'll be up to a maximum of 5 as well.
So a maximum of 5?
A maximum of 5. So after 3 years, we can look to see whether or not we want to renew for years 4 and 5.
All right, so there's 2 one-year renewals.
Right, and we're looking at doing all 5 right now, so we don't have to come back to the board.
So then it would, unless there was a service issue, then, right.
We keep going.
Got it, okay. And I like the carrot and stick approach of the damages versus the incentives. I think it's a good way to do it. Good, thank you. Mr. Jones?
Thank you. Just going back to the penalties, I'm not sure I quite understood the abbreviations on that one.
Sure.
1 to 5% of invoice or OTP, I assume that's on-time performance.
That's correct.
$50-$200 trips greater than 30 minutes.
Yes.
Can you?
Missing a dollar sign there.
Is it?
You want it, well,
I don't quite. So you have one missed trip. No, it's first you start with 98% performance. Is that correct?
yes.
So
That's the standard.
if we are, or if the vendor is at 97% performance.
Right, and the minimum standard is 95, and this is expanded. To get this on here, I abbreviate it a lot. So the minimum standard will be 95%, and if it drops below 95%, for it will be the entire service month, we will look at it imposing up to 1% of the total invoice. And it goes further. If it ends up dropping below 90%, it'll be 2% of the total invoice, so on and so forth, as much as 5% of the invoice. Also, incrementally, for trips outside the 30-minute window, which is what we deemed when we're determining on-time performance, if you're picking up at 31 minutes, 32 minutes, Ross and his staff could impose a $50 charge per trip.
So is it $50 to $200?
$50 to $200. So I imagine if they pick up an hour late,
Yeah,
it would increase. Maybe it's $100. over. If it's 90 minutes late, it could be, $150 upwards of that one particular trip. So you can charge them either per trip if it's a very late trip. You could have a good overall month, but if the overall month, the average is below 95% on time, then we would start looking at imposing a larger penalty on the entire invoice.
Thank you.
Some of the other OTP, on-time performance, if you look at service efficiency, that's passengers per vehicle revenue hour. So the expectation is minimum, you're going to have at least, and I know you don't really have 0.4 of a passenger, but the average we're saying 2.4 passenger trips per vehicle revenue hour each time that vehicle's in service. So, if they can get over that, if they can do 3 passenger trips within an hour, great. That's even an incentive for that, and that actually improves the overall efficiency of the service. Let me see if there's any other. I guess I don't see any other real abbreviations there.
So, if I may, Mr. Chairman, do we pay per trip or do we pay a flat fee for the entire month?
We pay per trip.
Pay per trip. And what is the payment per trip? Does it depend on how far they're going?
So there's 2 things that determine how much we pay them per trip. One is we have a 2-zone system, so it can either be a single zone or a multi-zone trip, depending on the distance of the trip and where it's going, and that determines kind of tier 1 and tier 2. And then, of course, there's one rate we pay for the ambulatory or the non-wheelchair, and a higher rate we pay for the wheelchair trips.
And if I may add to that, Luema, in her excellent negotiating skills, was able to provide for the single zone and multi-zone at the same rate. The Care Ride rolled back their rates on the wheelchair side to 2014 rates. So that was an excellent negotiation on her part.
So what is the rate for
those rates for them currently?
I
think our current rates is it's like $11 a trip for non-wheelchair, and it's just over $33 currently
for wheelchair,
for
per single zone.
And the new rates,
The new rate will be $31.53
for wheelchair single zone.
For wheelchair, and $17.93 for
Ambulatory.
non-wheelchair ambulatory.
So 17?
$17.93 and $31.53.
So the ambulatory will be going up from $11 to $17.93.
That's correct.
But the wheelchair will be going down.
That's correct.
And then the minimum passengers per vehicle hour, that's not packing more people into the van, but having several trips per vehicle.
Well, we are
Or
looking
either
at
one of
mixed
those.
trips. Right. We're looking at mixed trips. They're going to be buying some new vans. They're quite nice. I know they're Ford something or others, but they have both seats and areas for wheelchairs in it. The other thing that they're looking at, and we're not committing them to it, but they have brought forth to us that for the sedan service, they were looking at Priuses to be environmentally friendly.
But right, and even if there's a shared ride, it would be one trip for that vehicle revenue hour, even if there's multiple passengers in the vehicle.
Yeah, but we're trying to encourage shared rides. It's part of the philosophical concept and construct of ADA paratransit service across the country. It's supposed to, as much as possible, mirror our bus service that we're running, our fixed route service. And so in a fixed route, you have multiple people sharing a ride, all heading in the same direction. And so the concept is the same for ADA paratransit. It's not supposed to be a private trip. In a private trip, you call whenever you want. They come and get you. They take just you wherever you're going. And this is public paratransit. And so as such, it is designed to be, it's a shared ride. You're reserving it ahead of time. And we're doing things to maximize efficiency in the operation of the service. But there's still quality measures to ensure that the customer is getting what they need. So for example, there's maximum travel time that cannot be exceeded based upon the mileage and the distance that's being traveled by the passenger. So they're not in the vehicle forever. It's a reasonable amount of travel time.
Mr. Chairman, I have a follow-up on that. Now, we pay, the client pays 2 times the standard fare. Now, is that taken off of the 3150, or do they keep that?
That's in the cost. And they keep that, and then we will bill them out the difference.
So we bill the difference.
Right.
Okay.
Commissioner Dayton?
Yeah, I was wondering if they have an ineligible driver, how do we find out if the driver is ineligible?
There's a couple ways that we do that. We have a number of different quality assurance measures we do, one of which is we do random ride checks, where PSTA staff go to monitor the service in progress. And we're always, as a part of that, they're noting down the driver's ID number and the vehicle's ID number to make sure that it's one that's on our list. A lot of times if it's a driver who's not approved, the passenger will even know it because the driver won't know the rules of the program. And the driver may try to charge them the wrong amount of money, things like that. So it can come out in a complaint as well.
Okay. And then also I was wondering, I looked in the contract and I couldn't see anything that alluded to this. Yeah, I think this is a great thing, but how do we reference it in the contract? Is it in there?
I'm sorry, which thing is that?
Yes, the liquidated damage section.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
it's in there.
It's a whole section.
Right, it's written. Yeah, it's a liquidated damage penalties in that incentive section. It should be around page 30 of the scope of work section. There's three big parts to that entire thing. There's
Mr. Dayton, the part of the contract that was included in your packet, and I think it was a link, but it references the RFP. The RFP document was like more than 100 pages. I think it was a link, but that's where all this stuff is included. It was in the RFP. This is sort of the front part of the contract, the actual contract, and then as an attachment to incorporate all of the things that we asked them to do really is in the RFP.
Right, yeah, the scope of work section.
Not
yeah, there's boilerplate in the front part, and then in the scope of work section, it's in
Yeah.
Commissioner Rivers?
Yeah, well, first of all, I apologize, Mr. Chair, for being late. I took a different route from Dunedin here, which I'll not do next time. So. But in any event, and again, I apologize if you've already answered the question, but on the folks that we're recommending as their performance goes, and how are they doing? My understanding from talking to Brad is that they were doing quite well. Okay.
correct. So currently, the staff recommendation was to be award Care Ride as the current provider of our wheelchair services only. And I mean, they're phenomenal. You know, it's a close-knit run management team that we're on the phones with all the time. It's almost like a partnership. They really partner with PSTA the past 8 years.
I'm looking at that line. That's not the bottom
No,
line.
I'm sorry.
That's
Yes,
their line.
right.
Yeah.
The bottom line there is the Care Ride line, and we're looking at comparing complaints to the two types of services. The wheelchair service, we really see no complaints, and that's looking back over 12 months. And the one or two complaints we do get, sometimes we trace it back to the non-wheelchair side of it. And if you see the upper light blue line is served by Yellow Cat, our non-wheelchair, and those are where our complaints are coming from. The folks just not being picked up on time or feeling like they're left stranded.
Well, my only comment would be that that's kind of what we would hope to get, is that what Care Right has been doing. It sounds like we'll be paying them some additional funds through their incentive program, because it sounds like they'll probably be over the 98%.
Yes.
And just shameful that we have the kind of performance that the other company has been doing. And I'm glad we're able to hopefully deal with that.
Yes, absolutely. And the one thing I want to add is we have probably a little over 12,000 registered DART in our client base currently. And so the transition will be all the non-wheelchair people coming over to Care Ride. And we went into the second round, we were able to do kind of live presentations of the companies and really ask the detailed questions. And Care Ride, came through with a detailed plan. Listen, we know we're going to get a lot more customers. We already have a plan in place to bring in vehicles. We've already talked to our staff about, working extra until we get, more bodies in here. They have part-timers that are willing to go full-time. So they did outline a detailed plan to accommodate all the additional customers and rides that they'll be getting, including if they need to expand into additional office space, which apparently is right in the same building there. So we felt pretty confident.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I would just add to that two comments. I moved my office about a year and a half or so ago, but in my prior office, there was an orthopedic rehab facility right next door, and so I was able to firsthand observe Care Ride, the way they took care of their wheelchair-bound customers, and the drivers were very careful, they were very courteous. I just thought that was a pretty good operation. The second thing I would say is United Cab, I think, is tied in with Yellow Cab, because I see them sometimes picking up people under that program, and it doesn't matter what the name of the cab company is. The big issue, I happen to have a friend who comes to our parish on Saturday afternoon service, and a lot of times he's late because there's either a problem with the cab driver, or the other problem seems to be multiple people in the same cab ride, and they have a sort of a roundabout route that they take because of the fact that different people want to go to different places.
Right.
So that becomes problematic, and I don't know how Care Ride will handle that, but that's, I think, an important part of timeliness, is to make sure that the rides coincide with a reasonably close to logical route.
Absolutely. I think part of their popularity, and actually hit the nail on the head, is the fact that they do have that service where you feel like, you're being treated, everything is the most important thing to us is your day getting there on time. And we're certainly going to work with them in the transition, especially if they start looking at more shared rides, because we don't want to get to the point where they're deviating so much that it lessens the quality of what their customers have come to used to. So there's going to be, what we'll come to be used to. So there's definitely going to be a transition period. But I think both sides are confident that that we'll make it happen, and the customers will still remain pretty happy.
Okay, good, thank you. Any more questions? Do we hear a motion?
Move approval of this with one caveat. At the track meeting yesterday, they unanimously approved this with a comment from one of the group that I think was Yahoo!
That's part of your motion.
Well, you can leave the last part off.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Very good presentation, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more thing now that you unanimously passed it. At the board meeting, after the board takes a vote on this, we're going to have an event out in the lobby. We would love everyone to come out there. We expect some customers to show up to celebrate this new and improved contract. And little snacks will be served. It's always a good incentive.
Okay.
And I'm assuming, Mr. Chair, that this will be on the regular agenda.
Next week?
Yeah.
Yes.
We're actually planning on putting it at the beginning of the agenda to have this little celebration.
Okay.
Right, folks.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so next up is the late shift, the settlement, I'm sorry, mediated settlement.
Yes, the positive things keep coming on. I don't think we're going to have a little break in a celebration of this one, no, but it's been a long saga. But at your places is a summary that I put together of a mediated settlement agreement that we reached after an all-day session last Wednesday with Pepper Construction Company, the construction company that replaced the concrete at the facility. On the paper, I tried to summarize 11 years worth of saga into one page. Basically, the problem started happening in 2012 when their construction companies spiked a diesel fuel line during the construction and created an oil spill. And we've been haggling ever since, basically, about that, whose responsibility for the cleanup. It was all cleaned up, but who's responsible for paying for it? In March of 2014, about 2 years ago, those of you who were on the PSTA board might remember that Pepper came to the meeting and we sort of had a little negotiating session right there at the podium with him, and the board approved of paying him $195,000, and with the soil remediation to be capped at 182. So the maximum exposure as of March of 2014 to PSTA was 377,000. And this recommendation, which I'm making to you, and then the board next week is for a lump sum settlement for both those claims at $260,000. So that's essentially the $195 that the board already approved, plus about $65,000 for the soil remediation. So it's within our budget. We've been holding this in our insurance reserve all along. We've had deals with Pepper before that they have backed out of. The thing that gives me hope on this one is that he's actually signed a settlement agreement that calls for that he's seen all the documents. He's never done that before. And at least at the mediation, he seemed like he was wanting to move on from this long process. So with that, I'll answer any questions about this.
Quick question, Commissioner. The term equitable adjustment under claim number 1, explain that, please.
That was, I think, Pepper's term. Basically, at the end of the contract, they felt they were owed more money for work that had happened during the year and a half of construction that they had done that we had not paid for. And so to be equitable, to be fair, to give them more money, that's what they called it. That was not part of our contract.
Anybody else? I just want to congratulate Brad for bringing this to a conclusion, because this has been ongoing, and a large part of that, I think, is one-on-one with Brad and the officials at Pepper, and trying to get this thing wrapped up so that we don't keep having drawn-out litigation. When we have litigation involved, where you're paying money for the legal fees as well as for the actual settlement. So this is good to get this thing off our books and be completed and done with. And we'll be more careful in the future with how we handle this stuff, so we can get things taken off the books right away if we have a problem with the case. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Do we want to put that on consent or the forward discussion?
You can put it on consent, but somebody may want to pull it off anyway. I'm not sure.
It's up to you. I can't remember.
Is consent is okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Okay. I too also want to just acknowledge our risk manager, Diane Randall, who's sitting back there. She deserves a lot of credit for bringing this filing home. She sat with me in the attorney's office all day last Wednesday.
We wore them down.
Yes, and I would give that credit for the wearing down part to Diane. The next agenda item says Chris Cochran will speak, but he is not here because he is down in St. Pete Beach preparing for our 12:15 presentation that's related to this item. This is 3 contracts with Uber, United Taxi, and CareRide that we're asking for your approval on page 32 of your packet, related to a grant that PSTA just received from the state DOT's Commission for Transportation Disadvantaged. Ross mentioned it earlier. You all are familiar that we receive funds from the state for transportation disadvantaged funds that support a low-income discounted bus pass. You all also know that our board member, Patty Johnson, is very focused on trying to get more funds for transportation disadvantaged, and we were successful. And the legislature approved of additional TD funds that would be allocated based on competitive grants. PSTA received the largest grant from that competitive solicitation of $300,000, and the $300,000 plus a $33,000 match will be used to provide transportation disadvantaged eligible citizens in Pinellas County with free late night Uber and taxi rides, essentially so that second and third shift workers can ride the bus maybe to work, but the buses maybe stop running, they can get a ride back home using this program. The program will essentially be allocated between Uber, United Taxi, and Care Ride and be paid for almost entirely by this state grant. The state is very excited about this partnership that PSTA really was only able to achieve because we had our deal already with Uber and the taxi cab, and they're trying to replicate this across the country. So at noon today, we will be sort of unveiling this TD late shift program, as we're calling it, which essentially is after 9 p.m. at night, folks that are already signed up as, and we've verified their eligibility to be transportation disadvantaged, can get a free ride home. And it's capped at no more than 23 trips per month. So if we see some individuals that are maybe taking it mostly on Friday nights downtown St. Pete, we have a way of stopping that, or minimizing our exposure to what it's really served for. But I think it's a great next step with our partnership with these new innovative technologies, and this would be the contract language with these different providers doing that.
Yeah, it says we're doing a 10% match, which would be 30,000, not 33. Is it 33 would be 11%?
I agree with you. I'm not sure, Ross, you know this?
Yeah, so this confuses everyone. This is what I call state government math. So what they do is they take the total amount of money going to the project. So the total amount is $333,000, and then they take the 10% off that. So that's where the $33,000 comes. That's state government math. Did you follow that?
Yeah, almost.
It took me 3 months to get it. They look at it as how much money is going into this project. So they saying, well, you're gonna put in your 10%, we're gonna put in our 90%. So it's they look at it as a total project of $333,000, and then we're giving you $300,000 of it. That's your 90, and then here's our 10%, 33. That's how they do it.
And then I have another question. And on page 35, the fourth whereas, they're giving $500,000.
That resolution's been removed.
Oh, yes, okay. I'm sorry, I wanted to bring that up. On page 35 of your packet is a resolution that is not needed. This was erroneously included in the packet. Just right there.
And also, how do we come up with 23 rides? We're figuring that most people are, they're working and then they got to come home, and so 23 rides is that kind of like the best we could do, or?
That's approximately the number of work days per month.
Okay.
We work 5 days a week.
Okay. All right.
Most months are either 22 or 23.
Okay.
So it's sort of just capped. We just pick that number to try to emphasize this one trip per work day.
See how long this business I work.
Any other comment? Oh, Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, sir. Can we envision a scenario where we could exhaust those funds, and if so, what happens then?
If there is an exciting scenario that we might exhaust those funds, and the state has indicated a willingness to continue to fund us. Yeah, I mean, they've indicated that they want us to be very successful, and that would be a definition of success. I'm fairly comfortable that we will not exhaust the funds, but if we do, their line is open to extending it.
overcheck them?
I don't know.
So are we doing,
Vice Chair.
yeah, so on that same point, so we're estimating, this is kind of a year, we're going to do it in the next fiscal year.
Yeah.
That's the kind of the thinking process. And since it's a new service, we really don't know how long it will carry, but once the funds are exhausted, that program will end for that year, or you're saying we may be able to even get some more in the current fiscal year to finish?
They specifically said that they so prioritize this project of PSTA for success that they would be willing, if the funds run out prior to a 12-month period, to allocate some additional remaining transportation disadvantage funds that they have. And then, in addition, they have indicated that they would encourage us to apply for it again in following years.
My only point with that was as a way to communicate expectations. If we're not as confident as you're indicating, I'd almost want to call it like a pilot project to let people know that this is something we're trying. That you feel pretty good about the fact that it's going to be competitive.
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. So for instance, on we are paying the entire Uber bill for the trip. And the entire care ride bill for the trip, the $31.50, for instance, or the total taxi trip.
Yes. One of the real challenges that we've already seen with our relationship with our pilot program that's going on in Pinellas Park is the ability for especially low-income individuals, which is entirely folks that already qualify for transportation disadvantage, meaning they have an income that is no more than 150% poverty. They don't often use Uber. They don't have necessarily smartphones and a credit card, which you need a credit card to use Uber. So essentially it has to be free. The 6,000 individuals in Pinellas County that currently qualify as transportation disadvantage and get the low-income bus pass, they have to still sign up to be eligible for this program. They do need an email address. They don't necessarily need a credit card, but they need an email address. And we're going to be advertising directly to them when they come and pick up their bus pass on August 1st. And they give us their email address, then they can get into this program.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may follow up.
Yes.
So you have to be a current holder of a TD pass, monthly pass, in order to participate in this.
And then as new folks sign on to TD over the next year, they will be given the opportunity to sign on to this program as well.
So if somebody's new coming into, just working an evening shift, they will pay them, is it $11 for a TD?
Yeah.
And then once they're a member of that club, that $11 club, then they can participate.
Features. Yeah.
Okay.
This sounds pretty good. I would just congratulate everybody that's involved in this, because this should help make sure that, especially people who are working out on the beaches or in other facilities where they have a late shift, this would be tremendous to get people back home years before they might not be able to take on that work on that shift. This should help people in a situation of that sort of circumstance as well. So that's good. Okay, do we need a motion for this?
Yes, to recommend this.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously.
Regular agenda? I think so. I think this is a good one to talk about.
Okay. Yep.
Got a lot of credit.
Yeah.
We should.
Yeah, right.
Walk it up.
That's right.
Okay, Larry, we're all set to hear from you on benefits.
All right.
Good.
That time of year, right?
That's right.
Well, good morning, Chair Barkley and members of the Finance Performance Committee. I'm Larry Lonecker. I'm here to talk to you about our employee benefit program. And I can honestly say that this year's efforts began way back actually in 2015. And I'd like to thank the Finance Department, led by Debbie Leas, and James Bradford in Transportation and his team, because as we went through negotiations with SEIU, we really set the foundation for our benefit program this year. What we're asking this morning is for your recommendation of approval to renew our medical, dental, our prescription, along with our vision and life insurance. First of all, I'm here this morning with, many of you know, Sean Fleming from the Gehring Group. Gehring Group is our insurance broker, and they handled the negotiations with Cigna on our renewal. Based on what we saw with our claims, and not only the claim rates, but the cost itself, were trending pretty significantly upward for us. We saw rates here in Florida on average probably between 9 and 12%. And when we first took a look at ours, I think we were in the neighborhood of 12 to 14% increases based on our claims and increased costs. So it was a real challenge this year, and I commend Gehring, went to battle with Cigna and really reached a rate that was something that we could live with, that would be included in our draft 2017 operating budget, and came up with a 6.8% rate. Now, that certainly did mean that there would be some cost sharing, which we had negotiated with SEIU, and certainly affects all the employees here at PSTA. But I'm pleased to say that these cost rates are ones that we can live with and feel good about, because we didn't take apart our benefit plan. So I think that was really key for SEIU as well as the rest of the team to say, hey, do we want to keep the insurance plan that we have and not go in and really cannibalize our deductibles and out-of-pockets and co-insurance? So again, I'm very pleased to say that our approval for optional and supplemental life insurance with Minnesota Life is going to stay the same. Our renewal with our vision, which is through Advanica, that rate is also going to stay the same. And again, as I said, with our medical, prescription, and the dental that's covered through Cygnus, that would be a 6.8% increase. If you have any questions, myself or Sean will be happy to entertain those.
Yeah, congratulations. I remember last year you started with, I think, 10 or 11%, got it down to like 3.5 or something like this. So but we had to make some changes then, and so this sounds like, again, very good. I was a little confused with the schedule on page 39. We're talking about the employees, the 443, in the current plan, they're going from 2405 to the renewal, they go to 50.86. Is that correct, or that looks like a 100% increase?
That's correct. Yes. It's a big hit to the employees, and that's why, as Larry described, we've been very aware and concerned about it, and that's why we brought the union in along the way, talking to them about making sure they understand this. And that's why, in addition, Larry talked about coming up with some other incentive programs, ways that they can earn money, put in these little bank accounts that we're creating, so that they don't have to pay. That doesn't hit them.
But the employee and spouse, the employee and children, they don't seem to go up. Why that?
They go up more. They go up substantially more in total dollars than the single does, but being a higher number, their percentage increases a lot less. But when you look and compare our rates to other government agencies like the City of St. Petersburg, Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, Hart, which we've done, the $23 a paycheck for the employees is fairly comparable to other folks. The family and children and spouse rates that you see there are not. They are much higher than most other employers are providing to their employees. That's why you can see that more than 90% of our employees just get the single, because that's all they can afford.
Okay, Commissioner Wheelbreath?
For the record, too, I'm voting now.
Oh.
Just to let you know.
Yeah, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. I had the same question, because it seems pretty high, and I'm like, how can anyone afford that? But I don't know what St. Pete pays, because thank God I'm VA, so that's what my insurance goes through, it's free. But I don't understand how someone can afford this, if you just, and then if they have children, because you say mostly everybody just takes a single, but what if they have children? They would be paying the $268.84?
They pay $262.87 per paycheck if they have a family.
If they have a
Like
family.
yours truly.
So that's what you need.
Yeah. Now, I will say, City of St. Petersburg is surprisingly high.
Really?
It's something like $80-something a paycheck for the single in St. Petersburg. I don't know how they handle it, but you're a councilwoman there, maybe that could be something you can talk about. Pinellas County employees pay around 11, I think, or 11 or 12 per paycheck. There are, right now, at PSTA, thanks to James and Larry's efforts, our labor agreement has a $300 bank. They took this instead of a signing bonus for the labor agreement, a $300 bank that their paycheck, their health insurance premiums are coming out from. So right now it's free. The employees are thinking it's free. Their $300 bank is going to run out at $23.10 around January 1st. And I will be out, and James and Larry can handle the, oh my gosh, on the birthday period in January.
Yeah. That's got to be an education process for that.
Yes, it is, right. Sean, do you want to add anything to that?
I can just try and make it more confusing. Good morning, Sean Lumley, the Garen Group. But I think you both brought up excellent questions. And I have, we have some surrounding entity data. And, you see sometimes family as high as $500 to $600 in line winners for a number of other entities in the county. The hardest part, though, really in comparing it, I think even what Brad hit on is, it's $26, but we give them a bank of $300. And some of those other entities, sometimes there's some other discounts. So it really becomes kind of like alphabet soup or number soup to try and compare one group to another, because there's so many little nuances. But overall, that's just the only thing I always caution people, that comparing one to another becomes very, very difficult, because sometimes there's things you don't know about, like we give them a bank, or we give them an HRA account, or we give different things. So that's the only thing I would add on that one.
Just real quick, and I don't want to elaborate today, but perhaps sometime we could get a report on some things that are going on in the industry from a wellness standpoint for different organizations to get active and have some fun with it at the same time. But really, it's all about. Obviously, I know there's some things going on here, but I'd just like to know more about how we can explore that, because ultimately, it's about getting our claims down and keep costs down. And the only way we really do that is if we kind of, and it's easier said than done, because I'll try every day. But
And I'll throw one thing on there, and I think that's, we can put together with staff sort of something for you all. The one thing I would say is we want to give it probably about a month or two, because the EEOC, so wellness programs have typically been governed by HIPAA. You all kind of heard fell under that. Well, even though despite that, the EEOC with the ADA have basically just come in and released a ton of new regulations on wellness programs that will go into effect 1/1/17. So, in a couple of months, but that's something we'd be happy to bring back to you, and also incorporate any of those new changes in there as we talk about that.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Jones.
The $300 bank, is that before taxes? Does that get, so the employees are paying for their deduction with pre-tax dollars?
Yeah.
Question I would have as an employer is if they have a $300 bank or whatever else they may add with all the incentives that are accomplished here, it might be worthwhile to sit everybody down and say, look, you've got this much money and it's got to last all a year, and find out how much could be done per paycheck so that they're paying something all the time, because somebody that's not very good at balancing their finances is all of a sudden going to hit a brick wall when they have that much money coming out of their paychecks when it's formally good.
We actually suggested that as part of the negotiations, and the union wanted it all up front.
Okay. All right. It just seems like a logical solution to the discrepancy. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Do I hear a motion on this? So moved.
Second.
Second. We didn't have a second. Commissioner Scott, second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Passes unanimously.
This be consent item?
I don't know whether we need to talk about this or not. I'd say consent. Yeah. Okay. Next item is the heavy-duty towing and related services. Henry.
Good morning. On page 40 of your packets is a action item for a service contract for the Fleet Maintenance Division to award a contract to outsource towing and recovery services for the fleet. Towing 18-ton vehicles when needed requires specialized equipment, training, licensing, and of course insurance, and that's why the Fleet Maintenance Division has for many years, and at this point continues to believe that outsourcing of this particular line of work is both cost-effective and in the best interest. The RFP process was conducted by our procurement department, and as a result, we got responses from 4 suppliers. We had a selection committee, and after careful evaluation, we recommended that the contract be awarded to the lowest cost but also highest scoring supplier, Yoho's Towing, Automotive and Towing, who is also currently the incumbent. So the action item is to recommend approval for a 5-year contract with Yoho's Towing for a total 5-year cost not to exceed $175,000. Happy to answer.
Is this a kind of a set cost regardless of how many tows we get, or is it per?
It's not a set cost. There is a cost per tow. Okay. So each year, we budget a certain amount each year for towing. So it can be less and it can be more. But typically what we find is that we have a 4-year average. We know pretty much what we're going to use each year.
One of the issues we've been talking about lately about reliability and in the outlier years, if we go a certain way with first bus purchases, we're going to have less reliable. So probably more cost related to this. But anyway, okay, just curious if it was a per or a set fee. So
it is a per.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Jones.
And is the 175 over the entire 5 years, or is it per year?
Over the total.
So if you're doing...
It's about $35,000 per.
And there are 185 instances per year.
That's what our average.
So 35 divided by 185. That's not. It's pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
Well,
Of course, all of our breakdowns happen in Casa Grill and Tarpon Springs. In the evening.
The furthest point.
It seems like that.
Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do they have any performance standards in terms of response times that they have to, and if so, what are those?
Absolutely. We put a lot of performance standards into this time. Not that they weren't performing before, but we have a 30-minute response time guarantee to respond. If they can't respond in an adequate amount of time, then it's their responsibility to bring on backup support. So response time is key. They understand the nature of our business, and they have done well in the past, and we expect that they will do well in the future. So much like, yes, it does seem that buses seem to need to be towed from Tarpon past the grill. I can tell you that it is handled very quickly, and even during the 5 o'clock rush hour traffic, they do respond very quickly.
And a follow-up question. Yes, sir. If they don't respond, or if you're not getting the service that you need, do you have the flexibility to call other people? I mean, if Yoho's is not responding, can you call Steps? Can you call these other folks if needed? So it's not you're not locked into just them if they're not performing.
The real question is do you get the replacement bus out there quicker than the tow service gets there?
Yes, we do.
That's what I want to hear.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We have a protector service where we have buses on standby ready to respond.
Anybody else? I have a question. Really, the first question is, are we giving stats on what types of problems are causing the bus to be towed in the first place? And, so we kind of prepare for better maintenance on that particular component of what it is. So we cut back. I'm not trying to run Yoho out of business, but it would be as close as possible. The second thing is, when we pay these folks, are we paying them a per call, or are we paying them a per call charge plus a mileage charge, or how are we actually breaking down that $35,000 a year?
Great questions. Your first question, stats for looking at what's causing failures. Yes, we do extensively. We can tell you right now that just due to the complexity of vehicles in today's day, being able to fix situations out on the road is becoming less and less possible. So sometimes when the bus shuts down due to whatever it may be, it does require needing to be towed back. So we do keep very extensive statistics on all of that. To answer your second question, which is how we're billed, we're actually billed a fixed, a flat rate. There's no mileage involved, and that actually helps us one of two ways. One is if the bus breaks down, say 2 miles from us, it's a fixed cost. If the bus breaks down in Tampa, it's a fixed cost. So it just so happens, luck of the draw, that most of our buses are farther away from our headquarters than 5 miles, 10 to 20. So we're actually benefiting from that flat rate.
So even if it's in Tarpon, it's
the same cost.
Okay. All right.
It's the same cost.
All right. Any other questions? Fair motion to approve this?
So moved. Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I think that would be consent.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. That's not it. Okay. FDOT grant approvals. Debbie Luce and Pam Reese.
Thank you. Today we're asking the committee to recommend approval of Florida Department of Transportation FDOT grant for operations. FDOT provides 2 types of grants right now for our operations. One is a block grant, which is for general operating costs. The other is urban corridor program grants that help to relieve congestion and improve capacity along major urban corridors. We have 3 different routes that are funded by the urban corridor. One is the Express Route 100X, and that goes from the Gateway Mall in St. Petersburg to the Marion Street Transit Center in Tampa. We have then the 300X, which leaves from our newly renovated Almerton Road Park and Ride to also down to the Marion Street Transit Center in Tampa. And lastly, we have the Curlew Road Connector, which services the North Pinellas County along Curlew Road. Together between all of these grants, it comes up to $5.7 million, and we're looking for approval today to accept these grants.
Okay.
Second.
Second. Any commentary? Okay. Sounds good. All right, very good. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously, thank you.
Can that be on consent, or do we have to adopt the resolution?
Oh, there are resolutions.
There, yeah, for resolutions.
It's going to be on consent, just to make sure Alan reads the title.
Okay.
Okay. All right, very good. Okay, so ridership trends, Brad.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. I was thinking, sort of reminiscing that as of this month, I have been here for 5 years, and just my very first meeting ever, 20 days into my job, was the DART Contract Award. And it was, back then, it was very controversial, and the room was packed with elderly folks that were all rooting for Care Ride to win. And there was, as Ross mentioned, we had a different kind of program where we had a whole bunch of different vendors part of it, and so they were all in there, and I was a little overwhelmed. But we've come a long way in 5 years. The committee, and I think perhaps maybe in the future, maybe the full board, the committee asked for us to kind of take a deep dive into our ridership trend, which, as you can see, and you see every month, is down substantially. And to try to look in depth at what might be causing that, or what's going on. So I put together this little presentation. We have looked at it extensively, and we've done a lot more analysis than I've got in here, but I sort of broke it down into, of course, there is this national trend that currently declining transit ridership. Then kind of looking at what are factors that are happening locally here at PSTA that might have had an effect. And then to finish with sort of silver linings, because there are some positive things going on, I think. So again, PSTA's ridership is down about 12%. I think in the month of June it was maybe only down 10%, or maybe year to date, which is substantial. But it is down almost everywhere, pretty much everywhere across the United States. Everywhere in Florida, ridership is down. HART is down about 5.4%. I threw on here just to show that it is a national figure. The two places I just went on vacation, Los Angeles and San Francisco, and I have no idea why San Francisco is up 8%.
No place to park.
Maybe, but I think actually they were way down last year for some reason. Maybe. They look like, from the data I saw, that San Francisco was way down the year before. And so they're up from, that's why they're up 8%. I think the fact that PSTA's is down 12% versus the other ones, which maybe are a little bit less, is simply a fact that we had 5 years of record growth. And so when you're looking at year before year, most of these other systems started seeing ridership declines a year before we did. And so the fact that we're down 12 and HART is down 5 and some of these others are down single digits is really just a reflection that we were up so much last year. When we look at the benchmarking group, and there's been a lot of discussion and traffic on their website about this, all 20 transit systems that are in the benchmarking group are down, fairly confident, fairly consistently. The two stated reasons, or there's been a lot of analysis done by experts and folks. Gas prices and the economy are the two major explanations for this national decline in ridership. Gas prices in Florida have, in FY16, been at their lowest level in 11 years, consistently. Back here in 2009, they were about to the same low level, but they started rising. We, as you can see right here, we have been at the lowest level ever, or in the last 10 years, in 16. Most transit systems saw the drop starting around the early part of 15, our fiscal year 15, right when gas prices started going down. HART is reporting, I haven't seen this, but the approved economy allows more people to acquire cars after a number of years of declining overall automobile vehicle miles traveled in Florida and across the country. Vehicle miles traveled by automobiles is starting to go up again. So that would indicate more people are driving more miles and more people are getting cars. We see evidence that from the car companies that they are doing better and selling more cars. Now, we've often talked that a lot, and I had some graphs showing this, that we have a high percentage of riders that can't afford cars, and a large portion of our ridership is relatively low income. So are there other things that play locally? Perhaps. Last October, we did cut about 2% of our overall service. The East Lake Shuttle and the Route 30 in St. Petersburg were eliminated, and that has had an effect, obviously not a positive effect on ridership. We also increased our fares to be the highest in the state of Florida. I personally think there's some evidence that maybe we have sort of hit a tipping point where we've sort of priced ourselves a little out of the market, given our low income ridership primarily, that we are just too expensive for some customers to take other than only trips they have to take, and they're just taking fewer trips because of our fare. We as you can see, we are at $2.25. HART's at $2. Broward, all these guys are at around the same. In the benchmarking group, we're the only system, we're the highest priced bus-only system. There's some that have rail that are at $2.25 also. Our day pass is maybe more in range of what other systems are selling their day pass for. And that actually is the one type of fare payment that seems to be actually growing. We are seeing an upward trend in the number of day passes we're selling. And the amount of cash $2.25 fares that we're getting is declining. So let me just take a little bit of time to explain this graph, because my good friend Heather over there thought this was the most confusing graph she'd ever seen. So, the issue with our ridership and looking at it is, what types of folks are we losing from riding the bus? And we can rule out a number of different types of riders we have because we're not losing them. The biggest group are people using their low-income bus pass on transportation disadvantaged. You can see that it has now grown to about 25% of our overall ridership. A quarter of our ridership is low-income, paying the $11 TD bus pass. We're getting $11 a month out of 25% of our ridership, and that group of riders is not declining. It's growing. It has. When we raised the fare in last October from $8.25 to $11, we saw this spike taper off some, but it is still growing. This growth in TD bus pass usage reflects changes that we made to the program. Basically, we cut a lot of red tape out for nonprofits across the county to sign their clients up for the TD bus pass. The Homeless Leadership Board was very excited when we did this back then, and the nonprofits were all excited because instead of having a very long period of wait waiting when a client walked in the door of Goodwill or St. Vincent de Paul's or whatever. Now they can get on, usually within 24 hours, they can sign their person up to get a TD, a low-income bus pass. The other two groups that I show down here at the bottom that are not declining are the Clearwater Jolly Trolley and the Clearwater Marine Aquarium Trolley ridership, which is the blue line. The blue line is hovering right around 5% of our overall ridership is just riding from Clearwater Beach to downtown Clearwater or along Clearwater Beach or with the aquarium. That's not declining. The other group is this green line, which we only have a small part of this is a 6-year trend, because we just started the program, is our UPass ridership. Our UPass ridership, those are students at St. Pete College and other universities primarily. That's not declining. That keeps steadily growing, hovering also around 5%. So when you add these three groups together, low-income folks on the TD bus pass, students, and then those folks at the aquarium, that's about a third, about 35% of our overall ridership that is not declining. That means the other 65%, those folks riding the blue and white buses around the middle part of the county are dropping even more than 12%. This is my heart rate, yeah. Sorry. No.
What are the dotted lines in that?
Okay, so the dotted lines are the actual every month amount, and then these smoothed out red, blue, and green lines are the moving average. PSTA has a huge seasonal effect. We have a big spike in ridership in March and April for spring break, and as I'm going to show in the next graph, you'll see that. And then other times we have much lower. So to smooth that out and kind of see that what the trend is actually being, you do this moving average. This is not smoothed out, but this is another effect on our ridership. Our greatest drop in ridership this fiscal year so far has been the Clearwater Jolly Trolley along Clearwater Beach and the Clearwater Marine Aquarium trips that the Jolly Trolley operates. You see it's spiky all over the place. But this basically follows a trend of during spring break, the ridership more than doubles on that service every year. They also have a great effect when they put out a movie. You can see these two high-speed Dolphin Tale Movie 1 and Dolphin Tale Movie 2, and the ridership went through the roof. This last fiscal year, we saw a nice spike during spring break. We just didn't have a movie come out, and that has dropped the ridership on that route by 30%, just compared to last year. It's not really down historically. It's just we didn't have a movie. So let me try to finish on a positive note. We are seeing a number of routes across the system that are seeing long-term growth, and several that are seeing growth even until just very recently. The Route 11, which essentially goes from St. Petersburg up through the Lellman community, through Pinellas Park, and ends here at PSTA on 28th Street, seems to be growing over the last 6 or 7 years, and then has seen a decline just recently. The 61, which is on the west side of the county, basically up and down Belcher, and then up to Dunedin. It seems to be on an upward trend. The 75, which goes across 54th Avenue North, just kind of through the Lellman community and Seminole, has been growing just until recently. And then the Route 7 down in South St. Pete has been growing. Our tourist-oriented services are not declining. Tourists continue to ride very consistently. This purple line is the Central Avenue Trolley in St. Petersburg. It continues to either hover at a flat level or maybe even grow a little bit. This perfectly heart rate kind of line is the Suncoast Beach Trolley along the beach, along Gulf Boulevard, up and down the beach. That's not declining. The tourists are riding it just as much as they've always ridden it. This is a benefit to PSTA. We are shielded, or a lot of our services shielded from this overall national trend thanks to our tourism market not having that same effect. And then these two down here are the North Coastal Jolly Trolley, which also has a very strong seasonal trend with spring break being their peaks, and the Looper down in St. Pete. Not really declining, kind of holding flat. Last but not least, then I have two graphs here showing that we do seem to be maybe seeing a slight positive trend in our revenue. Or maybe we just hit rock bottom, hopefully. This is our actual, this is not ridership anymore, this is revenue, financial revenue from fare box revenue. Peaked in around 2013 at $1.2 million a month coming in through the fare box, and now has dropped substantially down to just over $1 million on average per month. A good news trend, although it's not nearly recouping the money, is our revenue from other fare-like sources, like UPass and the Transportation Disadvantage Grant we're getting from the state, and Medicaid. That's about 65% over the last 5 years. That's growing, but it's not recouping the drop in overall revenue, but it does not look, it looks like we're maybe stabling in our fare revenue loss. And then finally, my last slide is showing positive results of our fare increase, that we are seeing a turnaround in the average revenue per customer riding the bus. Ridership is down, revenue is not down as much as ridership, so the amount per customer is trending upward. It went from $1.20, which was one of the highest in the United States a couple of years ago, down to about $1.05, and then now it's trending back upward. That's the amount of money per customer that we're taking. So the base fare on PSTA is $2.25, but since a whole bunch of people are riding on that $11 TD bus pass, the amount of money we take in on average per customer is just around $1.15. So that's sort of the analysis we put together. We are still tracking this on a daily basis, route by route, looking at this. Essentially, I would summarize the thing. It is a national trend, and perhaps there are other impacts that we don't know about other than gas prices and the economy, but maybe we're sort of leveling off at a different level than we are right now.
Question, yes, Mr. Jones.
Is the UPass eroding into our full fare?
Well, certainly it is likely part of the reason that our average revenue per customer dropped is because students are riding a lot more than they were previously, and for a flat rate. The way that program was set up was that PSTA broke even at the beginning, and then is seeing steady 5% increases every year, but the students can ride as much as they want. They're not costing PSTA any money because they're just filling empty seats on the bus, but we're not getting any additional revenue from them. So yes, I think that is part of the effect. Same thing on, I think a bigger portion of this massive drop in revenue per customer is the transportation disadvantage bus pass use. It's the same effect. You get an $11 bus pass instead of an $80 bus pass, and the revenue per trip, they ride a lot more. But that has sort of bottomed out and is steadily increasing since we increased the fares back in October.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that's part of the reason we changed it. We updated the TD fares because we saw that trend because the TD was rising so much. And when we
Yeah.
We used to run what was it, 8:15 to 11 or 8:50 to 11. So it's good to see that it seems to be working.
Yeah, and then this other thing is a good sign, at least, that this is, flattening out some, and we're not seeing the exponential growth.
Right. Exactly.
Because essentially what that meant was there was just a lot more low-income folks in the county that we were not able, that were eligible for the TD bus pass that weren't getting it, either because they didn't know how to get it, but in the last 2 years, a lot more people have figured it out. We've made it easier for them to get the bus pass, and they're riding.
And it seems that every LCB meeting I go to, there's another new group that shows up that we didn't previously knew was there, or that didn't know about the program.
Yeah.
Mr. Rivers?
Yep. Just as a reminder, what is the percentage of our total revenue that comes from fare box, our fare system? Is it
20%.
20%?
20% of our total revenues for our operating budget are covered by fare.
Okay, so the rest we're getting in grant money, like what we talked about earlier today.
And the property tax.
Yes. So the message is that it sounds like we're losing riders. The ones that choose to ride buses are now choosing, they have choices, and they're choosing to leave bus ride.
I would say that's an accurate statement, that we are maintaining our tourist-oriented riders, and you could argue that they don't have any choice because they don't have a car because they're on vacation. And we are maintaining our low-income ridership, and they maybe have fewer choices. And then the students, we're maintaining them, and those are three growing areas, and where we are losing are perhaps folks that do have choices, or thanks to the improved economy, suddenly have choices to not ride us and either get a car or have access to a car.
And when we do our comparatives on the now infamous bus purchase, looking that we did, we've been doing, and one of the big pluses supposedly to going to electric was rising gas prices that might in the long run equate in total cost to diesel. I mean, that's kind of the argument, even though I'm concerned about this interim period. So as gas prices go up, we're going to lose riders. That's the statement here.
We'll gain riders.
We'll gain riders, excuse me. So the argument is, let me just make sure I get this right. The argument is as gas prices go higher, then we'll have more people getting on. Hopefully, that's the case. And so these choice riders is what we're still trying to go after. That's still the message, right? I mean, that's still
That's right.
In the long run, that's where we're gonna make it. I assume. I mean, that's where the pluses are going to be coming from in terms of being more financially secure.
That's right. I mean, that's exactly why we're proposing programs like this partnership with Uber to get that first mile, last mile, to get choice riders that live too far away from the bus to easily catch it, to put amenities on the bus like Wi-Fi and new shelters, to add service later in the evenings and on weekends to give people more options. It is to try to get those folks we're not getting already on the bus, which are assuming they have other choices.
I think that's good. I mean, I think you talked about that later night service. I think those are the kinds of things when people start to see that service as being available, they start to consider transit a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because it's a realistic alternative, because it's not only first mile, last mile, it's kind of like first hour, last hour. They have to be able to get there and they have,
get back home.
Yeah, get back home. So it's kind of, thank you. Just wanted to talk through some things. Any other thoughts?
I was looking at this chart. Back in, I guess it's January of beginning of 15, January 2015, where it starts to drop off. That's about where our revenue starts to drop off. I mean, dropping below what we had been to where it really goes down. And I'm just surprised that people caught on so quickly that they could go ahead and buy cars and start taking this thing where they saw the prices of the going down and said, okay, I can buy a car. So we seem to see that dropping down in our total fare box revenue. And then we get down to October 15th, and that's when we put in our fare increase. So we were wondering if the fare increase had anything to do with this, but we put that in way at the end, and the fares have gone up since then. So when we talk about the fare increase, I don't think that has anything to do with the major drops that we've seen. So I think the fare increase that we did, I mean, it might be higher than everybody else right now, but I don't think it's been a cause of our symptoms. Things went on before we increased the fare.
Yeah, more of a time issue.
Yeah, our riders haven't invested.
Yes, and there's one other thing that a lot of times we talk about the ridership of buses that are only like 2% of the total people. But I think it would be if we could somehow say, we know that so many people ride the bus on the way to work, that if we were to talk about our ridership as the number of people who go to work, it might be a whole lot higher and make a little bit more sense to people, because a lot of people use the bus to go to work. So it might not be everybody in the county, but we want to show that the people who go to work use the buses a lot.
That's a good point. That's a good point. My only comment on the fare increase was, I think, at least my belief, is that this enormous spike in usage of the TV bus passes that happened over the last couple of years kept the low-income ridership growing substantially and masked. We were seeing drops in other kinds of riders, the kind that Commissioner Rogers talked about, the choice riders, were dropping while gas prices started coming down. Yes, they were leaving the system, and the fare increase had no effect on them, like you're saying. But I think it did have a little effect just in the last couple months, as this red line is no longer growing by 10% a month. It's kind of flattened out and growing just a little bit. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Brad. And we have two other reports to go over. We're running a little late here. Monthly financial statement.
Chair Barkley. This month we're reviewing the month of May, and we had budgeted a deficit of $2.5 million, and we came in at $2 million for a $539,000 positive variance to budget. Our revenues were $309,000 above budget. Again, our fares were down, starting to level off. And you heard me talk about the first part of the year. We were behind schedule in collecting our state and federal grants. We are now able to catch up on that. So that is driving our revenues above budget. And expenses, as it has been each month, are below budget in every category, just about every category. On a year-to-date basis, we are currently at $15.5 million as compared to our budget of $15 million. So we are trending ahead of where we thought we would be, as we've talked about. So we are hopeful that by the end of the year, we will put not only the $2.6 million into reserves, but an additional $762,000 for a total of $3.3 million. So we're still trending on that to be able to meet it. Are there any questions on the financials?
Sure.
Yes.
Kudos for beating the expense budget, but we're beating it really substantially. substantial, and I wonder if we, as we look forward to next year, would we expect to see closer estimates to budget?
I would expect so. Some of what we're doing here is because we know that the fares are down. Everybody is tightening their belts, holding positions open longer. Because the biggest variance is in the personnel side and the fringes. So when you've got your largest expense, if you can control that, you're controlling just about everything. So we've held positions open, trying to make do. We did reduce some of these expenses in next year as far as adding what we call attrition.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that if you go to page 53, and we look at passenger fares, our budget is way up, but our May 216 actual is above the May 215 actual. So again,
That accounts for fare increases.
yeah, but we're making more money.
We are. We're ahead of where we were last year. I mean,
Just a little bit, but we're up. So we overestimated on the budget, but when people say that, we're not selling it or bringing as many riders, our passenger fares are up. So
I just,
it has its ups and downs.
But that's
riders on the bus have their ups and downs.
But that's year to date.
Yeah.
Is that year to date?
yeah.
But to an extent, we get some fluctuation in monthly fares if
We
people are
certainly do.
buying groups of passes. But
You are absolutely correct. I was just talking to Brad about that. We've got two big providers or buyers of passes, AMSCOT and CBS. And when we do our budgets, we try to guess when they're going to actually buy these passes. And let me tell you, I think we guess wrong every month of when it's going to actually happen. So there's some wide variations that come into that. I was suggesting to Brad and to our team yesterday, maybe we should just look at how much they buy on an annual basis, average it out over the last couple of years, and then accrue for it. So on a steady basis, like 1/12 of whatever they buy, and then true it up quarterly. Because we aren't very good at deciding when AMSCOT or CBS buys things. And that throws us off significantly as well.
is there a way, this is not, we're running behind now, so I want to, but is there a way that we could set it up so that they don't actually physically touch or buy the passes from us, but they simply act as a sales agent and then they print the passes when people walk into the CVS or the Scottrade or AMSCOT. So that way they're not physically inventorying them and buying them in bulk, but they're simply getting a commission or whatever off selling them and doing it that way so that we don't have that wide fluctuation where they buy a big chunk and it's unpredictable.
I think we are going, it's an excellent point, we're going in that direction with the smart card technology, so that they will be able to have the cards to be able to sell right there as needed.
Okay.
So excellent point.
I'd also like to point out, talking about the tow truck contract we just let, that the miles per road call increased almost 2,000 miles from 9,100 to 11,000. So that's a good indicator of the fact that keep Yoko down, right? Okay, so anyway, that's just a thought I had that we're doing a better job of avoiding that problem down the road. Okay, yes.
a couple of other charts there. Good to see the trend on on-time performance. Bus complaints per 100,000 passengers is kind of slipping, going up. Do we know what kind of complaints we're getting? Is it customer service calls, or is it drivers?
We just started looking at that a little bit. think it deserves more analysis. It was definitely fueled by Williams Park, down on St. Petersburg, but I don't think that's necessarily.
That's a couple months behind us.
Yeah.
And I remember you asked for a breakdown. Actually, our customer service superintendent did do a breakdown. I don't have it with me. I'll get you that information. Having dealt with 4 or 5 customers directly myself, it's all over. It's across the board. It's, everything from service running on time, to service running issues, to running hot or left behind. So it's we've had bicyclists, buses are passing by too close, you name it. So there's a awareness plan that we have to really just kind of bring some of these things along to our operators and things we think we can mitigate underway. But I'll bring you more information on this.
Last thing is contracts, and it says attached is a list of contracts.
It was included in.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Scott.
Yeah. It was included in the email package. Okay. But
I didn't get it. That's okay.
Yeah. But it's essentially a quarterly report that you get every 3 months showing all of our contracts.
All right, Mr. Scott, your question?
Yeah, thank you. Debbie, on the back of the financials, on the diesel fuel on page 53, looks like we're down at almost $2 million year to date. Do you happen to know, just curious, what the price per gallon we're buying at this point versus what it was last year at this time?
I could compare. I know.
Down, obviously down a lot.
Right, we locked in a portion of it below budget, and I think the average was probably around $1.43 for the unhedged portion.
Okay, for the unhedged portion.
For the unhedged portion, and then I've already locked in, I'm going to say about 60% for next year already, below $1.70.
Below $1.70.
Yeah.
Okay. How much of our total exposure are we hedging?
Right now at about 60%, and on this about 80%. We're about 80% hedged, which is good because we don't talk about it a whole lot because we're below budget. But because the market has dropped so low, we probably, if we hadn't put in as much, set aside, locked in as much, we would have saved even more money. So I'm always looking to see how do we do in hedging it.
It's a little bit of a roll of the dice. You don't really know what it's going to do.
No. But as long as it's below my budget, it's wonderful.
Right.
Okay, everyone. We ran a little late today. I apologize, but thank you very much. I will not be at the meeting next week, but hopefully things will roll along. Most of our items are built into the automatic approval process anyway, so it should be fine.
Well, we can speak to him if need be. I said we can speak to him if need be.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, I'll see you You are welcome to come to get a free lunch at the Don Cesar Hotel. Now to go down there.
That is tempting.
Yesterday they had some ice cream. Well, we didn't say that.
It just doesn't seem like
They will not know that the
some of that budget and just said yes. Which I thought would make it easier for capital projects because we were getting we were getting the balance of budget capital. So it's like capital property, which when I checked, they were saying, yeah, if the project is eligible, if we put balance put in to be funded, but when they got down to it, because of the
So anyway,
criteria,
I'm very concerned about that part.
this time we didn't get any.
Nobody else seems to be. So I'm either alone on this, and I want to go, there could be all this political stuff that just drives me crazy. But I want to make sure I understand the facts. The other thing is, and I was trying to get at it a little bit, and I thought about it afterwards. It's probably needed to phrase it differently. But it's the driving prices. If we have next year, the argument